Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Frank Deya podcast. This is the very first episode. I've been looking forward to have this on, and I'm very happy to have Sally Nekesa, my very first guest, very exciting person, and we will be covering some really interesting conversations. So, Sally, tell us a bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I am really happy to be here. I am an entrepreneur. I am a trainer of Forex. Amongst other things, I am an avid DIYer. I love it. I can't get enough of it. That's a bit about me. The important bits for this conversation anyway.
So, just to bring things to perspective, I think the most appropriate thing I think I should be asking you is how exactly are you trying to protect yourself from the coronavirus?
Well, let's start with the basics. Wash my hands, wash my hands, wash my hands. Also, a lot of people don't know you can find really good, I want to call them recipes, but that's not the word, to make your own hand sanitizer. So if you've been getting to the store and you're finding that they've run out, or you don't have the money to buy the store-bought ones, the premium brands out there.
Because the prices are really kind of skyrocketed.
Yeah, some of them have skyrocketed. Other people don't know which ones are the reliable ones, which ones are good and quality stuff. Well, I've made my own. So
how exactly do you do that? Can you share maybe the...
So you just go to any pharmacy and ask for their rubbing alcohol. In Kenya, we call it rubbing alcohol. Wherever else it is, different names, but it's the kind that's used for surgeries and things like that, or to clean a wound. So make sure it is above 70% alcohol. If it is 90 or more than 90, even better. So get that. It comes in a clear variety, sometimes purple, but don't be too concerned about the color as long as it's got enough alcohol content in it. So that's 1. 2, you can get some glycerin. And 3, you may or may not want to get some aloe vera gel. So the ratio of mixing is, say, 1 part glycerin or aloe vera to 2 parts rubbing alcohol. Mix it very well, and you can store it in a tiny container, but its shelf life isn't very long because it doesn't have all the preservatives and stabilizers that the professional made ones have, but it will still do the job. So in case you don't have some, you can make your own.
So these ingredients are locally available? Quite
locally available. They are not expensive. Say rubbing alcohol won't cost you more than what, $3? $5. If it goes more than that, well, there is something important in that thing. But usually it will cost about that much. Aloe vera gel or glycerin, about the same amount depending on how much you're buying. So yeah, you can really make it easy and cheap.
And I think it's also important to iterate the fact that everyone's been asked to stay at home if you can. Try as much as possible to just isolate yourself, because the disease is spreading really fast. So many countries are struggling with this, and I think the most important thing for everyone to do right now is to do all you can to stay safe and make sure that you don't infect other people. You don't put yourself at risk. Just stay safe and take very good care of yourself. Initially, when I was starting this podcast, I had this idea about a couple of months ago. I had a range of topics that I wanted to cover. However, the way things have turned out, I think it would only be prudent for me to cover something that is very relevant to everyone right now. So, for example, it was only, I think, yesterday that all schools and campuses were closed in Kenya and many other countries. And I think one of the biggest questions or challenges that most people will be asking themselves is what now happens to the school-going children who now have to stay at home with their parents or their guardians and relatives. The prediction and the news that we keep getting is that this thing is going to be with us for quite a while, not just a couple of weeks. It might stretch on to months. So I think it would be important for us to figure out at this stage, what are we going to do with our future generation, our young people, the pupils from elementary school, students in high schools, and students in campuses. And the reason I brought you on to cover this is because the topic that I want us to start with, particularly for this discussion, is something that is very close to you, something you've gone through, you were brought up in, that kind of system, and you're pretty familiar with the experience, and I feel like you can share some of it with the audience. And basically it's on homeschooling.
Cool.
Yeah.
So about homeschooling, so I've gone through all three major systems of education in Kenya. So there's public school, private school, and international schools, which have a Western-based curriculum. So IGCSE, ACE, that kind of thing. So for a time, I did go through some American-based system called ACE. It was really interesting. It was really different from what the Kenyan system did. And it encouraged some things that I think the Kenyan system should stress more and, think about more. For instance, as opposed to just cramming the rules and how you speak English and practice it. In that system, we had to actually read for the teacher. It was part of the exam, but it wasn't such an intimidating thing. You do it at your own pace. It's really broken down into nice consumable chunks for you as a student. It was really, really great. That's what I think. And it wasn't cramming too much information into one child that later on down the line, half the information they're not going to use anyway. You just find that you discard it. It's just wasted space in your head because it's not taking you anywhere. You're not taking it anywhere. It was just really stressful in the Kenyan system, especially the public school system. And in the other system, the ACE system, the classroom sizes were smaller. It was really, really great because the teacher was able to give me and we were about 5, the other students, enough time, enough individual attention. They just don't skim over you because class is too large. They can't do this. They don't have enough time for you or see me after class because I'll give you 5 minutes then maybe. It was there then. They explained it to the best of their abilities in nice, manageable, small chunks. It was really great. Then it wasn't really common because that was about 15 years ago. That was a really long time ago.
Yeah.
There weren't a lot of us. And we all knew each other from a certain background. It was a church background then. And it was very challenging at that time to socialize with other kids because kids in school or of school-going age need to socialize, to learn some social skills, to learn how to cooperate, to work together, even some basic stuff like sharing. It's important. And if you're a kid alone, you may not pick up that skill early enough. So then we were only 5 because of that. However, in the past year or so, I've seen a lot of news articles, and it's really encouraging to see that parents have embraced this sort of education system. So currently it is IGCSE. You can get so many articles, so much course content for your kids of different levels, different ages. It's all out there for you to find. There's paid content, there's free content. anything you need to help you educate your kids and instill in them the values that you think are important, and, you know, give them that time they need with you as a parent. This is how we do it. And there are few organizations in Kenya right now that are doing it. They're not all that recognized and they're not all that known, but since now people have to stay home with their kids, and some of their kids are in important years. So in Kenya, there is an 8th grade or standard 8 exam. Really big thing, and the parents really want their kids to do well. This is the exam that determines which high schools their kids go to. So parents really, really always want their kids to do well. The next exam is in, what's that grade called? 12th?
Yeah, 12th grade.
12th grade.
Yeah.
For us, it is O levels, right?
Yeah.
O levels, it is 4th form. And those two exams really, really important. The second one determines the universities that they can get in. And for most parents, now that their kids are home, they're really worried about what they can do about that. Yet there's homeschooling, and most people haven't heard of it or think it is for rich, posh, white people somewhere out there in the world.
Well, actually, I wanted to take you back a little bit, because you see that assumption of, you know, homeschooling is just for a select few, is something that not many people, it's something that many people kind of conform to, because they don't understand exactly what it is. So maybe could you define what exactly is homeschooling? How is it structured? Who's the tutor? Is it the parent? Is it like a structured system whereby students or pupils from a particular neighborhood are brought together to learn, around home, and, it has a particular program which is very different from normal schooling? How exactly would you define homeschooling, and what would be the major difference between homeschooling and, conventional schools?
Okay, so homeschooling is done at a central location, obviously. Okay, it's not so obvious to everyone, but it's done at a central location. So for instance, let's say the kids meet at the teacher's home, and there's a small number of kids. It's not a lot of kids. Say, most of the time, less than 10 kids. And they don't all have to be of the same age. There can be different age groups. Now, the thing with homeschooling is that the small class sizes enable the teacher to give each student enough attention, as I mentioned earlier. And also, it is not as strict, not as rigid as 844 system. That is the Kenyan regular system. So the workbooks are easier, they're simpler. I'm not saying that they're not all that informative. They are. It's just in manageable chunks, right? Remember when we were in school, we would have to cram all this information and do this giant test at the end of the term. And then at the end of the year, there's an even bigger test, right?
So ideally, the main or key differentiator is the content that the students are fed, which is what differentiates it from normal schooling. Yes,
the type, how the content is put out, and it's done, the manageable chunks I'm talking about, it's like when you finish a chapter, that is, you get the exam at the end of that chapter. You won't come and meet it again at the end of the year where there's this giant exam and you have to be cramming hours for it.
Yeah. No. So like normal schools have about 3 terms, and they have a test at the end of each term. So, which is basically putting together all the information that the students have been learning for the term, put it into, a test for every subject. And then the same thing goes on until the end of the year. So the key difference here is that the students take up the information or the content per chapter. So they don't consume the entire chunk of information at a go. It's structured in chapters, and then as they proceed with every chapter, they progress to kind of the next stage. Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So now, the teacher, the tutor, whatever you choose to call them, doesn't have to be the parent. So like for Britons or Americans, they can afford to have a parent as a teacher, because a lot of the parents choose to be stay-at-home parents, because the cost of a nanny and stuff like that is really expensive. So as a stay-at-home parent, some of them, it is very well curated work, so you don't have to put in too much work to be a tutor for your kid. It is, the structures are very easy for you as an adult to follow, and since you've been through some of this stuff, especially the simpler lower level stuff, it is easy for you to guide your kid through it. Right. But it gets to a point if you feel that your child needs more specialized, tutoring or training, there are teachers that you can hire. So you'll take your kid to them, and given the school day, depending on the system you use, if you use the British system or the American system, the end of the day varies. Also, the length of the school year, not length really, but the times of the school year, the months that school is on, in quotes, they vary, right? Mm-hmm. So for us, we have 3 months break, 3 months break, 3 months break, right? But for British system could be different. For American system, there's a whole 3-month chunk at once, summer, right?
Yeah.
We don't have summer, but they do. But if you're using American system here, you'll have to use that too. Mm-hmm. So those are the big differences, just the timing in the year, how the format is, and they really don't put in a lot of extra stuff. In a Kenyan system, let me call it extra stuff. But you know those things that you'd sit down and ask yourself after you've been to class, say Form 2, you're thinking, where am I going to take trigonometry in real life? You all the time you've been thinking about a future career. Let's say you wanted to be a lawyer, right? Mm-hmm. And you're sitting down and thinking, oh my goodness, where am I going to take trigonometry? And as you look at it, it's a good thing to have, but I don't think it should be forced on you. Some of these subjects, especially in high school, they were forced on us.
Well, why do you think they existed in the first place?
I think the people who made that system years ago, actually it was decades ago, it was first done in the 70s.
Yeah.
That's when it was just abruptly brought in. It was dropped in by the then president.
The 844 system, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because before that it used to be 7246, there are so many numbers. Mm-hmm. But still, if you got to a point and you decided at this point, okay, education for me, okay, book learning that is not for me. I can go into blue collar jobs and do my thing there. If that is your thing, go for it. If art was your thing, then there weren't any programs, but now there are. You could have a system or pick subjects that are more geared towards what you want to do later on in life. And I think it encourages kids to think about that more seriously than this 844 where you're drummed. You have to do physics and geography and you're thinking, but I don't like them, I don't do well in them, I don't enjoy them, but you have to do them anyway.
Well, now, the reality of the matter is that a lot of students or pupils in the country, for example, are already in that system. Mm-hmm. And considering the situation that we're all facing at the moment, they will still have to continue that system. I don't think that, them being at home would generally make them switch entirely to a completely different system. And maybe to help me understand and the listeners, what's the possibility of using the concept of homeschooling? Because look, the reality of the matter is that a lot of people in their homes right now are looking at ways of getting the students back to school, not in the physical classrooms, but to learn. So do you think that enforcing a switch from conventional systems that they're working with at the moment to maybe, the homeschooling system is something that would be feasible, or it might confuse the students at some point?
Oh no, it's not going to confuse them. I don't think it'll confuse them that much because I think students are really adaptable. 1. 2, it's not forcing people to change or adapt to a system that is so strange and stuff. No, it's more about figuring out what you can do right now to help your kid get through this certain stage. Say 8th grade and 12th grade, right? They need to get those marks. They need to get to a certain standard to get on to the next year, right? So what are you going to do as a parent to help your kid get there? There's e-learning. Actually quite a few people that I had spoken to before this outbreak, they thought that e-learning was for those people who are so far away from civilization, who can't come to class every day, so they have to do it. And it was for uni students. It wasn't for regular people. It was for someone far away who is doing higher learning, someone across the ocean who is doing higher learning, right? I wanted to attend, say, Yale or USC or Harvard, right? And I can't go there physically, but you can do e-learning. But now the reality of the matter is some of these Asian countries had it right the first time round, way before this virus came along. Because they have been doing e-learning or online learning for years, mostly to teach English and stuff like that, but they've been doing it and it's been working amazing. So they are way ahead of the curve. And for us, I think we should adapt.
Adapting is a solution, yes, I agree. However, the reality that we are facing at the moment is that we may not have the right infrastructure to adapt. I'm looking at a family that is living in a place where, electricity is a problem, internet access, and, devices, infrastructure is not as commonplace as maybe even a pupil who's studying in an urban area like Nairobi. What's the adoption strategy? Because you can just switch overnight or wish these things to happen immediately.
No, you can't.
Is there a way that, they can organize themselves within their communities to, introduce a new system that could work for them while this crisis is being worked on?
Well, it would be great to think that they could fundraise in their community, and the money that would have gone into school fees can go into setting up local infrastructure to, say, bring Safaricom internet to a small area, right? But that would defeat the purpose of self-quarantine, unfortunately. So it has to be done individually. And that's really quite unfortunate, especially considering the amounts being looted and going into harebrained schemes by politicians. And as Kenyans, we know harebrained schemes. We've seen all of them in their various forms. But unfortunately, we don't have the power to push them as much as we would like to right now. They are going to go ahead and bulldoze and loot as much as they want. And that money would have gone into building bridges, building infrastructure for schools, because by now, apparently, every child is supposed to be having their own laptop. Remember those promises? So if they had actually done this, we would have been way ahead of the curve.
No, that particularly...
So, unfortunately, that is what we would have liked to see, that they kept their promises. And Kenya right now, this wouldn't be such a horrifying, scary thing for parents. Students too.
That might sound like we're trying to focus more on online learning as opposed to homeschooling, which I think is a different concept. Or maybe
slightly, however, they can be put together. You can homeschool online.
Okay.
As in, the homeschooling is, yes, about learning from home, one, but it can be done for people who can't reach physically.
Okay.
So I don't see why they can't be combined. You just need the curriculum, you need your willing student, and yes, you can make it work.
How would you assess the qualifications of the tutors who would be participating in the homeschooling, considering that in this current environment, with the reality that we're facing, everyone is staying at home. So most or the tutors that we expect are probably the parents, right?
Fair enough.
And assuming in a household where one of the parents is working and the other one is staying at home, do you think they would be well equipped in good time to be able to deliver the courses to their children at home?
Well,
or is it possible to structure the courses in a way that is easier for even the tutors to digest before they can be able to share it?
So I mentioned this earlier. It is possible for the tutors to have a manageable, easily understood curriculum for them too, because it's important. You can't explain something to your child that you don't understand yourself. So there are teacher's notes for most of these courses. Teacher's notes, if the teacher is a qualified person, they already know how to go about it. They have studied their material, they know how to do it. If you're a parent, can't afford to take your kid, but you can afford to get the courses, because there's some places you can get them for free, like Khan Academy. There's so many out there. Just Google and you will find them. So many free courses, great courses, in-depth courses for all ages, and they're there, right? And most of them come with teacher's notes or a marking scheme for you to, work along with your child. You just need a few minutes to prepare and you're good. Now, these companies that I talked about earlier that are dealing with homeschooling and in Kenya right now, they do vet their teachers. They just don't let anybody in. And most of them require a TSC number. A TSC number is a Teachers Service Commission. It's for registered teachers. It proves that you have gone through all the tests, you have all the qualifications academically, and you can teach children. So whatever level it is, you get your certificate. Once it's approved, you can start teaching. So there is vetting that goes on. They just because you say you're a good teacher or you're good with kids doesn't mean that you are. You have to show qualifications for it.
Okay, having gone through the homeschooling, at the onset, how do you think it impacted your upbringing if you probably compare yourself and the other people you came to interact with later on who were in public schools or, were going through the conventional system of education?
Okay, so I think it really improved my confidence in speaking. In whatever I'm doing, I do it with confidence because, first of all, you're in a small class. You don't have a group or a clique to work with or something like that.
Okay.
You are working on this thing, whichever subject it is, whichever assignment it is, you are doing it yourself. How you understand it. And when you don't understand, you had to pluck up the courage to go and ask the teacher. So I don't get this. Please explain it to me once or twice or 4 times. You had to ask. So right now, I'm comfortable with those things. I'm comfortable with asking. I'm comfortable with standing up for myself. I'm comfortable with reading and speaking out in public because that was actually one of the things we were tested in. How to speak in a room, how to project enough in a room. It was taught to us. And I think that was a wonderful skill. And when I got to, because I was in the Western style school, the system for a bit, and then I went back into public school to finish so that I can get into high school with less difficulty. And when I went back, I was surprised because no one really spoke in class much except to answer a question. So it was a direct answer to a question. Very few people had the guts to lift their hand and ask a question, especially if there was a temperamental teacher. And believe me, there are enough of those in the public schools.
So they had a confidence problem.
Yes, because the teachers, they beat it out of you. They want absolute and total submission. and quietness, and the ideal child is seen, not heard. So in a learning environment, you are not left to express everything about yourself in a productive and constructive way. And the only place that I found people who could talk and, argue themselves out properly and, express themselves was in debate club. And debate wasn't for the shy people. So you'd find that the people who are willing enough to speak and to stand up and debate these things at the drop of a hat, they weren't the best orators. The best orators, and the ones who had the best grammar and, they could build all these nice big sentences, they were too shy to do it. They were like, nah, that's not for me. It was peculiar to me. So I think that's one thing it really taught me.
In my assessment, and pretty much assessment from a lot of experts, it's that that coronavirus is going to change a lot about the society that we live in today. And some of the things that we're going to adopt will not just be around for a couple of months while the situation still ensues, but will eventually be adopted, for long term. Do you think that if homeschooling becomes one of those concepts that parents take up for their children, do you think it might disrupt conventional schooling if it does become adopted as a common, system for educating students?
I think it's already disrupted it partially, not as massively as some people would have liked, but it's already disrupted enough because currently there's a court issue.
Yeah, there's a court case.
Yeah, and the Homeschooling Association is trying to get it legalized because it's not mentioned in the laws of Kenya. It is not mentioned, but it is curiously illegal. And last year there was a parent who was arrested because of homeschooling his kids, even though he had done a marvelous job at it. He was still arrested because apparently kids need to be taken to a physical brick and mortar school. It doesn't matter whether they are teaching the values you want instilled in your kids. It doesn't matter whether they are giving them enough attention or they are helping your children grow. You just have to take them to a brick and mortar school, and I think that is counterproductive, really. Because there are people who would like to have their kids in really good schools, learning certain things, but they can't. Either financial constraints, location, unavailability of that curriculum in the area. So I don't see why doing it yourself should be a crime. Anyway, these people in the courts, the Homeschooling Association, they're really trying to get it legalized, and I think it's a wonderful thing. And the fact that they're being fought so hard proves that the traditional schools, they're not so comfortable with this idea. And it's not just traditional schools, it's as a people. We think that too, that the only place you can take your kids is a place where they have to dress alike, stand at attention in parade, and, be lectured about things during the whole day.
Do you think the government has a legitimate concern for not legalizing homeschooling? Maybe because, this is socialization of the students. Every person comes from a different background. And if they're taught to socialize in a particular way, the moment they get an opportunity to meet other peers, they may exhibit or probably have a lot of clashes because the parents might be very strict in instilling in them their values, which might be quite contrasting with other people from different places. And I think part of the reason we have this uniformity in public and private schools is because we want people to grow up in a certain way, a certain culture. Do you think there could be a legitimate concern from the government for not legalizing homeschooling?
But what pertains to clashing,
Yeah.
people will always clash. People have always clashed.
True.
People are clashing right now.
Yeah.
Because of personality, because of differences in ideology, and it's always going to happen. So I don't think there's a legitimate concern when it comes to kids clashing. It is part of the growing process, understanding other people, knowing that your ideas are not a fact. They are not the standard. People will disagree with you. Better your argument. Learn to share. Learn what is acceptable for you, what is acceptable and right. And where you need to draw the line, where it gets to a point and you're like, you know what? Nah, I can't put up with this. But when it comes to concerns, I think if they legalized it, it would be easier to control all the different systems that are out there, because there's no standard, parents can teach their kids whichever system they want.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are not equipped well enough.
Yeah.
Some of them don't have the best resources. So there are parents who are, on this hand, giving their kids some of the best paid for education, some of it free, and they are well capable to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Or they have good enough tutors to do it. And there's enough information for them in their circles. On the other hand, there's parents who want to do it, or who have already started doing it without the best resources, information, or support, because they do need support. They need a system where their kids don't learn in isolation, where their kids socialize with other kids. So if they legalized it, it would be easier to standardize level the whole playing field, and also easier for these kids to get into the regular public high schools if they want to. If they want to get into the regular local universities, they can do so too, because it's quite challenging for them when they don't have the regular grades from public or private school that operates within the Kenyan system.
So if they're able to legalize it,
Mm-hmm.
they can regulate it to ensure that there's
There's a
some
good
sort
standard.
of basic principles are covered. Because, I'm assuming someone coming from an anti-vaxxers kind of society, it would create, quite the clash.
Could. It really could. Because as a society, we believe in vaccinating. No, really. We believe it is important. And you bring in someone who is telling other parents, you know what, it's not so important. Just rub some essential oils and, they'll be fine.
Ideally, those are some of the concerns.
That is a concern. That is a real concern. However, if it is standardized and you want to get your kid, cooperating and learning and meeting with these other children from the homeschooling, whichever homeschooling association you're in, I think there'd be some requirements to get in too. You want them in, that is all great. You can meet all this list of requirements, that is great. Because even in the Kenyan public system, you may want your kid to get into, say, 5th grade. They won't just be allowed in. They need to take a test to figure out, do they really belong in 5th grade?
Yeah.
So I don't see why there shouldn't be similar regulations in homeschooling. The government shouldn't be able to change that system, because that system is why the parents are primarily there. But if they can help regulate it, to sort wheat and the chaff and, put some basic safety regulations, even though from what I've seen, these associations are self-regulating amazingly well.
Mm-hmm.
That is good, but mostly just make it legal. Mm-hmm. And easier to disperse this information about homeschooling to a wider audience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I see. So, one of the key concerns that part of the discussion could be the transition from regular schooling to homeschooling might not work for everyone, might not work for every student. Mm-hmm. Coming from a psychological, background, do you think this is something that can be adopted for all children, or because some students maybe interact better with others. Others may not be very comfortable being taught by their parents because of some sort of friction. There could be quite a lot of reasons for not making it possible to get this going for everyone. What would be the solution for those who are not able to get this going?
That's the beauty about having three systems. There's a private school system, there's a public school system, and then there's the Western school system, right? So if homeschooling and the Western system don't work for you, or you notice that your child isn't thriving in that, you can switch them. Learning isn't so rigid that a child can't adapt. You can always adapt. That's why when you moved from one grade to the next, the content was different, the teacher was different, the setting was different because it's a new classroom, probably new tools for you to use. Learning is adaptable. It is not something so scary that kids can't do it. Kids are more flexible than you think. And I'm not going to say that they are blank slates, but they can take amazingly well to new situations, people. As long as they are comfortable, I don't see why they shouldn't be able to adapt to the Western systems, American system, British, or from British to Kenyan, although that rarely happens, but still, it is very possible.
So this is something you'd endorse?
Yes, wholeheartedly.
For parents going forward, since, we are all going to be stuck at home for the unforeseeable future. Mm-hmm. We need to find a way to get our children to get back to school.
Mm-hmm. And I don't see the problem in exposing your child to a different worldview in regards to education, because it's a different worldview. They're not used to it. However, I don't see how that could harm their chances with anything. Mm-hmm. Information acquiring through any means, as long as it's legal, logical, I do not see how it harms your child. If anything, it just gives them a wider view of what's going on out there, that this isn't the only way to do things. Many ways to skin a cat. Sorry, Peter.
What do you think would be the biggest challenge to parents who are planning to take this up as a new method of educating their children going forward?
So I think the first thing would be internet connectivity, because that's very important. Kenya is one of the leading countries in Africa in internet connectivity. We're really high up there.
Yeah.
But a lot of parents don't realize just how versatile it is. It's not just for YouTube and Facebook and Googling. That you can learn entire courses out of this thing, right? Mm-hmm. So them getting to use it properly and showing their kids how to use it, that's one thing. I think in most cases it's the kids who will be showing their parents the other way.
Yeah, sure.
So it's easier for the kids to adapt than you think. This generation of kids are more tech savvy than we were. They're more advanced with technology at a younger age, younger, and that's how it's going to keep going. So parents shouldn't be too afraid of it, as long as you have parental controls and you can regulate where your kid is going online. By the way, parents, Net Nanny is your friend. Install it. Look for
Net Nanny.
Net Nanny. Oh, sorry. So Net Nanny is a service that lets you monitor and curb the areas where your child can go on the internet. So let's say you have a family laptop or tablet or something where they'll be doing their learning. When you install your Net Nanny, it makes sure that offensive ads and things that you wouldn't want your child exposed to, those racier sides of the internet and those kind of ads, they don't appear anywhere, and your child can't access them either. Some of them also offer the function of letting you see where your kid has been if they delete, say, the internet history, and you'd have no idea where to get it from. Net Nanny, some of them can do that, so it's an added advantage. You can really monitor what your child is doing online. And if they're doing something you do not approve of, here is where sharing your values and instilling the good quality values you think about to your child.
Okay.
So
yeah, sure.
it's not the internet isn't something to be scared of. It's something to be embraced. The future is going there.
Sure. So technology is an enabler for a lot of these things. However, the truth of the matter is it's not evenly distributed. What would you think would be some of the ways of improvising for people who are living in far-flung areas who may not be able to have access to technology but still would want to keep things going despite that limitation?
Well, that's a toughie. If they can access the internet, personally, I know that we have several internet providers in Kenya who are quite versatile. If that is a problem, that could be a toughie. Because getting this information outside of the internet, it's toughie.
So the only solution first has to be internet connection.
Yes, electricity and internet connectivity. After that, you can do the rest.
Interesting. So finally, do you have anything else you'd like to add to the discussion?
So, I think I mentioned earlier that I am doing a Forex training thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm a trainer. I've been at this for years, so I was approached to share my knowledge, and I think it's a good thing to share my knowledge. I started first with Kenyans, and it is now going online. So if you want to join us, we are on, there's an event link on Eventbrite. I think everyone can access that. Eventbrite.com. And the name of the class is, please brace yourself for this, it's kind of long. Learn how to earn through stocks and bonds, crypto and Forex. And it is being put up by bitcoinke.io. I'm going to repeat that. Learn how to earn through stocks and bonds, crypto and Forex. So that is being hosted by bitcoinke.io. So register. It is going to be on April 1st of this year, 2020, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. East African time. So I hope you can join us, learn a few things, ask questions. It's going to be online, so anyone, anywhere can access it. There's more information about what will be covered for each of these categories, stocks and bonds, Forex and crypto. They have basic outlines on the page. Just look it up. If you have questions, please contact us. We would love to hear from you. If you have anything to add, still contact us. We would really, really love your feedback.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I think I'm going to put a link to the event on the show, and we're definitely going to have you on for more discussions around different topics.
Woohoo!
Really appreciate, and thank you. Looking forward for the next show.
Thank you for having me, Frank.
You're welcome.